We have finished Say Hello. We are up to sums and dates. Next up is using some math operators. We have addition, multiplication, subtraction, division, and square roots. We're going to start by writing print Python, which is our variable. So that's going to end up, if I just run that, print our Python emoji. Then I'm going to add a comma to separate that because I can continue to add to that statement. And I'm going to write a string is very good at, which we can see, and then comma, and then the word sums, which is another variable that's stored in our emoji library. So comma sums. Sums, if we look in the emoji library, is right there. So we're going to get those emoji back. And if I run that, we're going to say Python is very good at multiplication, division, subtraction, addition. So let's see if we can do some math right now. Let's do another line in print, and we can start off by saying 230. Multiplication is this little star. So star 5782. Let's just start with that. And if I run that, I get that number. So just to test out to make sure that our little program is doing the right thing, we do that. And in fact, those numbers match. So that's perfect. So it's correctly doing math. If I wanted to make it more complicated, I could then do a, to the power of, which is going to make it way bigger. Star 2. If I run that, we're going to get a massive number over here. Let's see what that is. That's in that million, so that's 5.2 billion right there. And then I could even go ahead and divide by a really big number, 23781, like we did right there. And we get that number. So Python is able to do math using any of these operators. If you ever want to do it, you use a print statement and you can write the math inside and it will be able to solve that for you. You can even do different fun groupings where you've tried to confuse it and you do, let's say, what is 2 plus 3 multiplied by 5? It'll do order of operations, where if you did 2 plus 3, that would get 5. Then 5 times 5 is 25, but that's the wrong way to do it. Your order of operation says 3 times 5 is 15, and 15 plus 2. So it turns out it gets it right, gets it set 17. So play around with it, make sure it's doing it right, which it will. So we're able to do math. So test, run your code. So we did that step, check it off. Did Python calculate the sum correctly? Of course it did. It doesn't, so you don't have to. Japanese computer assignments. Emma Haruku Iwao used computer science to calculate the value of pi to 31 trillion digits. That's a lot of compute power right there. Answer is so long it would take 300,000 years just to say it. Who wants to do it? No. So try changing the sum so Python does a complicated one, just like I did. Go ahead and try to print your own. Pause this video when you want to try it. And now move on. We've done this step. We've done this step. We can keep moving on. Run our code. Make sure that it calculates the sum. And make sure your sum has a left and right bracket around it. If it doesn't, and you just try and print out the command like that, we're going to get an error. It needs those parentheses to know what's going to be printed out in the output. You're inputting this, and this is the output, wherever we need the parentheses to get that output. So we've done that. We've asked Python to calculate a really big sum. You might find the answer goes across multiple lines. So if we were to make this be super big, let's do that number raised to star raised to that number. Run that. It's going to go really long. You see how it's like never going on to the next line? It might take a while to scroll. So what could we possibly do? Click on the hamburger menu, which is this menu right here. And then what you can click is full screen to view your project. So I can click on full screen and I'd be able to see more of my project like so. I can click escape on the keyboard to get out of it. And then you might be able to see more of it in full screen right there. All right, so, that's just how it's going to work. Later on, we'll determine how we could overflow that to the next line, but that's not for this lesson. So the line from date time import at the top, we talked a little bit about import statements last time. This line is importing a library called date time, which is a pre-written line, or it's pre-written code that is able to use the time and date of the computer clock, which is here at the bottom right. So we are going to use that to get our current date and time. It's called a library, and these libraries or code are really common in languages like Python that are allowing us to do a lot of functional things using code other people have written. There's libraries for drawing charts and graphs, making art, calculations, and a lot more. And we will explore some of those libraries as we work. So let's add another line to our code to print some more text and emoji variable. So we're going to go ahead, we'll keep these just because they're kind of fun. And then down below, let's write print and then the. So we're going to print the word the out as the word the. So you'll see the word the appears. We're going to put our comma to separate that. Calendar, make sure you spell that right. So if I print that, that's a variable. It's going to appear as a calendar emoji, which is in our emoji tab right over there. And we're going to add another comma and then clock. And that's going to add our clock emoji, which is going to be right there. It's a variable in that emoji tab. And then we're going to type is as a string, which is going to be that text. And then we're going to type date, time, dot, now, and then parentheses. Now I have a beginning parentheses in the front, and if I highlight that, you'll see it's kind of highlighting the end one. These two start and open the print statement. And we also need to set an empty parentheses for datetime.now, this function that's going to be called. So if I run that, I'm going to then get this line statement that says it is 2023, it is April 21st, and it is 8:02 a.m. with 13 seconds and 540,600 milliseconds. And every time I rerun this, you'll notice that it's right now, this number is making it slow. So I'm actually going to change that number. You can see how it's, not moving very fast and I can't actually click. I'm going to change that number just so that this program runs faster. So now I can keep running it. I change the number slower. And every time I click it, you should see the time go up as time does. It only clicks forward. So our time is currently going up as that happens. So we're actually pulling the time and date from the clock of the computer. So as long as the clock of the computer is correct, then we're going to end up getting the correct time right here, which is pretty handy when you want to, pull this in some sort of program like your iPhone, where it wants to say what the date is. That's exactly what's happening. We're pulling the time and date from your supercomputer, which is your phone. All right, so tip, you don't need to use the comments. They're just there to help you understand. So if you notice, we have line number 11, put code to run under here. This line is not being run by the computer. It is just a comment, and it is there so that we are able to know where we should be putting this stuff. Apologies for that email. All right, so test run our code a couple times to see the time and date update like I just did, and check that you have a full stop between date, time, and now. So you need that period between there. So make sure that you have this line written correctly and go give it a try. Pause this video and go build exactly what I just said. And now it's time to unpause the video. Next up is rolling a dice. We are going to build a function that is a random number generator. Moving on to roll a dice. So Python can generate random numbers and make digital dice, which is pretty cool. In Python, you call a function to perform an action. We've already used a function called print, and we've used many other functions to output text. You can define a new function to group code together so you can name it and reuse it. So we want to look for where it says put function definitions under here. So we see right here on line 7, most people start making this function down below the code, but I'll explain in a moment why that's bad. We want to go up above our whole program, so put function definitions here, but below the import statements. The top line has to be our shebang statement, which is saying we're using Python. And these 3 lines, our imports, need to be above our functions. So this is kind of like the order of where we put stuff. Functions are going to be, we can add some space for it. They're going to be under this little section. So we're going to create a new function. And to do that, we say def to define the function. And we're defining roll dice. And a function is defined by whenever you want to have a space, the naming functions have, or when naming rules is we put an underscore between those just for good syntax. And then we have parentheses and then a colon at the end. As soon as I get to the end, if I hit enter, it should automatically add a tab in, but if it doesn't, make sure you hit tab on the keyboard to get this space. Without that, if I'm typing over here, it's going to be not inside the function. So you have to make sure you're indenting that. You notice that indent is right there with that space between the def is aligned on the left, and then this stuff is considered to be inside that function. So we are going to add that, and we're going to write print, parentheses, Python, calling a variable, comma, string can make so it's going to print that stuff out as words, comma, dice. And we can see that dice is a variable that we have, where's the word? In here somewhere, dice. So we have that emoji. Next up is we're going to write print, parentheses, you rolled a, so another string, comma, rand int between 1 comma 6, and make sure you have end parentheses after we're calling random int. So random int is being pulled from the library called random, and it'll allow us to make a random number between our lower ends and our higher ends, whatever we want. But we're starting between 1 and 6 because most dice are between 1 and 6. So we've currently defined that function, and make sure that these are indented. If they are not indented, then it will not work. Just like that. That is not indented. Hit tab, those are now indented. All right, so if you run your program, nothing's going to actually happen yet because we've now taught our program that we have a command called roll dice. But we need to use that command call that function roll dice. So down below, put code to run under here. We're going to go back down to the bottom, and we're going to type roll underscore dice parentheses, and we don't need the semicolon or the colon anymore. So if we type in roll dice and we click run, we are now getting this new statement that says Python can make a dice, which is appearing right over here. And let's say I want to add a space to it. So let's say I'm going to print right now before roll dice, print, and I just kind of want an empty, nothing on it. I'm just going to put a blank space. So if I do that, now what I'm going to get is I'm going to get that space between it to organize my code. So by printing out like just a space between the obviously parentheses, the quotation marks, we get a gap. That way we can kind of see the separation. So roll dice is rolling right now between 1 and 6, and every time I run it, it's saying you can make a dice, and it's changing what my roll is. The lines under the they're indented. To use the tab character, we need to do that. The underscore is used exactly as I mentioned because we can't use a space. If instead of roll dice, I just did roll dice, we would have an issue even if we tried to call it down there. Naming guidelines state that everything, there can't be space between these words, so we use underscores in Python to fill that gap. All right, so we've made a simple dice right now. I've even shown you how to make a space, and we're going to run the program. Make sure that you pause the video now and you go do all of that, and make sure that your program's able to run. You might be missing a comma, so make sure that you have stuff like the comma, and make sure that your roll dice function is actually below where it says to define roll dice. And just to show you an error, if we call roll dice on line 6 before it's defined on line 8, we get an error because we're trying to use something before we've taught the program what it is. That's why we put our definitions above where we use them. If I have it right below, then it works. So we can see that the program works as long as our call of the function is below the definition of that function. All right, unpausing the video now that you guys have done that. Uses of random numbers include cryptography, data science, and adding variety into games in computer art. Computers generate random numerators. They create numbers using an algorithm. In other words, they're not true random, but they're random according to an algorithm. For numbers that are to be truly random, you need something unpredictable like from the real world. So it's like random with an asterisk to it. The fire variable stores a fire emoji, which is in our emoji library right there. The code print fire multiplied by 3 outputs 3 fire emoji. You need to output the correct number of emojis to match the number rolled. So what does that mean? So if we were to type right now, print, and then I were to say fire multiplied by 3, we'd be rolling the dice. We'd be rolling a 1, but we're printing out 3 fire emoji. If I did like print times 5, we'd print out 5 fire emoji. It only sometimes would match. We want to make sure that these emoji are actually matching our dice roll, so this is representing the dice roll. So here's what we're going to do. So we're going to change our code. So pause the video and we're going to start changing our code. What we're going to do is we're going to change random integer into a variable called roll, and then, this won't make sense yet, and then we'll use the variable to print out that number so that the fire emoji gets matched. So we're going to go up to our function definition, and we are now going to modify this definition. So right after the line Python can make a dice, we're going to go to the end of the line. We're going to hit enter to add a space, and we're going to type roll, which is going to be a variable. We're storing information in this, and roll is equal to rand int between 1 and 6. And then instead of writing print you rolled a random integer, we are going to remove this, and we're going to replace that with roll. So first we're going to make a random number. We're going to store that as roll. So whatever we get, it will then call it down below. So if I got rid of this print fire statement, which you should definitely do right now, we ran roll dice. It says you rolled a 3 right now. and then print you rolled a roll. So same thing's happening, nothing looks any different. Now here's where it's going to be different. After the roll random int and after the print you rolled a roll, inside your function, so instead of down here, we're going to go up to our function and we're going to add a line, hit tab to make sure it's indented, and we're going to print out fire multiplied by roll which we're pulling from whatever that number is. So let's say we roll a 5, that 5 gets stored, it says the number 5, and then it does fire multiplied by 5. So let's see how that works. So if I run that, you rolled a 3, 2, 1, 6, 4, 5, and now the fire emoji is matching because we're using this saved number to then get called inside of that. And if you don't want to use fire, you can use any emoji that you'd like. Maybe you want to use the emoji that says games. So you can go over and change the word fire, and I recommend you do this, to games. Or maybe you even want your own emoji. You can go to emoji library and go find something that really calls to you. So it's almost Earth Day, April, this Saturday, tomorrow, the 22nd. So if I want Earth Day and I want this little emoji of the ground, maybe I go over and I go to my emoji library, I go to the end, and I say, I can't spell Earth Day equals, and then I add that emoji in by pasting that in. And now whenever I call Earth Day, so I could say print Earth Day times roll, we're now printing out the little Earth Day emoji. And I recommend you pause the video, go find on Emojipedia, whatever emoji that you might want, and go add that emoji to your library, and then go call it so that you can roll whatever you want. So pause the video and go do that. All right, now that you're resuming, and I know this video is already getting pretty long, we're going to finish up soon. So test your project a few times, make sure that it works. Tip: variables are useful when you need to use the same value multiple times in your code. Giving a variable makes sense for its name, helps you have your code be easier to understand, which is why I called like Earth Day. It makes sense. You kind of know when you see this that it means that. You shouldn't call it something random, it would be confusing. All right, finally, last part of this video, we're going to upgrade our dice so we can choose the maximum number instead of it just being between 1 and 6. Or if I said like 1 and 50, I could just randomly generate a number between 1 and 50, which is cool. But I want to be able to pick the number instead of it just randomly doing that. So feel free to change that number between 1 and 6 before you change this and pause the video, or continue on with me and we are going to build some user input. So an input function asks the user a question and then returns their answer. So we are going to go into our roll dice function and we're going to go after our first line, Python can make a dice. We're going to go to the end right here and we're going to hit enter. We're now going to add another variable and we're going to call that max. And max is going to be equal to the input of us, whatever we want. So we type input and then parentheses, apostrophe, so we have a little string because it's going to ask the question, how many sides should our dice be? Question mark. And then I'm going to put a colon, and then I have my apostrophe to end it. So this is going to wait for user input when it runs. So if I click this program, it's going to stop at this question. How many sides should our dice be? How many sides should our dice be? And you should see this little blinker below waiting. So you have to physically take your mouse and click on this side, not this side, but this side, and then you can actually type. Let's say I want it to be 50. I'm going to then hit enter, and it's not going to work. I rolled a 3. It actually is still just using between 1 and 6. That's because I haven't used max yet, which we are now going to go change. So go pause the video and go update to this max line. All right, now that you're back, we are going to add in the next line, print. So go to the end of the line after max, and we're going to type print, parentheses, that, and you're going to notice this weird slash. This is a /, which is right below the backspace key. So that /s. What this is going to do, and I need the apostrophe right here. Normally, if I have a apostrophe, that's for a string, and it's going to say like these words should be printed out. If I put this /, it's going to allow me to print the word, and I'm just going to run it. If I say 5, the word that with the apostrophe is able to run. Otherwise, this apostrophe is being used to say it's a string. So we put a / so that we can use words that have apostrophes. So we have that, comma, or actually I don't need to do that. That's a D, and then I'm going to end that, comma, and then I'm going to use the word max, which are a variable, which is what we're storing for how many sides we want. All right, So print that's a D max. So it's gonna, whatever number we put in, it's gonna echo that back. This part's not quite gonna work yet, but if I click run, I'm gonna say, let's say 50, that's a D50, and then it says you rolled a 4. But we didn't really roll a 4 because the dice at this point still can only do a maximum of 50. We've put our backslash in, I showed you that. And finally, we need to change our roll variable to use the word max as the maximum value for random integer. So we want to go over to the roll. Roll is equal to a random integer between 1 and not 6, but between 1 and max. That way, by adding in that max, it's able to be between that and the number we have. If I run this right now, we're going to get this error, which is saying that non-integer stop for it. Basically, we don't know, like I could type anything for max. If I type in over here, let's say 50, it would be a number, but I could type in the word blueberry and then it would have an error. Like you can't roll between 1 and blueberry. It needs a number. So because it needs a number, what we have to write is we have to put the word int for integer, which is a type of number, and then we add in a parentheses for max. So int max, this int says the data type has to be a number. So it's claiming that this has to be between 1 and a number of whatever we put in. It will get an error if we put in a word like blueberry. So now if you run this, I want a 50-sided dice. That's a D50. You rolled a 38. It in fact took my input, which was 50, and we rolled a 38. And if we keep running this, which I recommend you do, that's a 100-sided dice. I rolled a 26. Let's say, between 1 and inch max. If I ran this again, what did I just mess up? Sorry about that. All right, so if I run that again, I pick 10,000, a number you know that you should have a lot of these emojis, which we do. That's a lot. I feel like I rolled for close to 10,000. What I get? I got 7,924. All right, so we've now made a random number generator, which can randomly generate a number that we input between 1 and max, and we are able to print all this out. We're using a function. We have roll dice. We have defining roll dice. We've done a lot so far in this program, and there's a little bit more to do, but we have now started interacting with full Python. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.